Earlier this month, Apple did that thing it loves to do where it releases half the tech aisle in about 5 minutes and then calmly expects the rest of us to reorganize our lives around it. It's like being mugged by brushed aluminium. So in this video, I want to do a proper quick-fire roundup of everything Apple announced last week, what's actually new, what the key benefits are, and most importantly, whether you should stick with what you've got or twist and upgrade. Because that's the only question that really matters, isn't it? Not is it new, but do I actually need this thing in my life? Hello Tailoring Talkers, welcome back to the channel, and we have got an Apple Roundup episode for you here. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. And as ever, if you find this video useful, please do hit like, and you can also check out our channel memberships. Apple's March 2026 announcements included the iPhone 17e, the iPad Air with M4, the MacBook Air with M5, the MacBook Pro with the M5 Pro and M5 Max chips, the all-new MacBook Neo, and refreshed Studio Display and a brand new Studio Display XDR. Let's start with the iPhone. Apple announced the iPhone 17e, which is now the more affordable entry point into the iPhone 17 family. And on paper, it's actually a pretty sensible product because it gets a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR display, the A19 chip, a 48 megapixel fusion camera with optical quality 2x telephoto, USB-C MagSafe, and storage starts at 256 gig, which is one of those upgrades that sounds boring in a keynote or press release, but matters massively in the real world because nobody wants to spend proper money on a phone and then start playing storage Tetris 6 months later. The way I see it, this is Apple trying to make the iPhone sensible, feel a lot less compromised, and honestly, I think it succeeds because MagSafe matters in this day and age. The 48 megapixel camera matters, and the A19 means that this thing should stay quick and usable for years to come. So if you're on an iPhone 15, 16 or anything very recent, I'd say stick with what you've got. But if you're still using an iPhone 12, 11, an old SE, or something that now feels like it needs a little prayer every time you open the camera, then yes, this is a very straightforward twist. So I would upgrade. It's probably the smartest iPhone in the range for the person who wants a good iPhone, not a status symbol. Next up, the iPad Air. Apple's updated it with the M4 chip. It still comes in 11 and 13-inch screen sizes. It gets more memory, enhanced connectivity including Wi-Fi 7 support, and support for Apple Pencil Pro and the Magic Keyboard. Apple says it's up to 30% faster than the M3 iPad Air and up to 2.3 times faster than the M1 iPad Air. And I think the iPad Air story is actually very simple. This continues to be the sweet spot iPad for most people. It's the one you buy when you want something that feels premium and capable and future-proof, but you don't need to go full iPad Pro and convince yourself that you're editing a Hollywood movie on it at Starbucks. So if you already have an M3 iPad Air, stick. If you've got an M2, I'd mostly still say stick, unless you're really pushing it hard. But if you've got an M1 Air or an older standard iPad and you genuinely use it a lot for travel, work, notes, media, multitasking, all that stuff, then yes, we're now getting into twist territory because that jump starts to feel worthwhile. Now, let's get into the Macs because this is where Apple really went to work. First, the MacBook Air. The new MacBook Air gets M5, still comes in 13 and 15-inch sizes, and Apple has added a 12 megapixel center stage camera, Wi-Fi 7, support for up to 2 external displays, up to 18 hours of battery life, and crucially a 512 gigabyte starting storage, which honestly is one of the most welcome upgrades here, because for years the MacBook Air has been easy to recommend with that one little asterisk where you had to say yes, but the base storage is a bit mean. So this isn't one of those dramatic redesign years where Apple changes everything and everyone loses their minds. This is more Apple taking one of the best laptops in the world and quietly removing the little objections people had to it. That makes it a very easy product to recommend. If you're on an M4 Air, stick. If you're on an M3, I'd mostly say stick as well, unless that storage bump or the newer connectivity really matters to you. But if you're on an M1 Air or especially an Intel MacBook Air, then yes, absolutely twist and upgrade, because that's where you'll really feel the gains in speed, battery life, webcam quality, efficiency, and just overall day-to-day niceness. Then we've got MacBook Pro, and this is where Apple stops being sensible and starts flexing. The new MacBook Pro gets M5 Pro and M5 Max, with Apple highlighting a new CPU design, a next generation GPU, Thunderbolt 5, faster SSD performance, up to 24 hours of battery life, and the same excellent Liquid Retina XDR display with a nano texture option, which I highly recommend. Apple also says M5 Pro and M5 Max bring a new Fusion architecture and a new 18-core CPU architecture with up to 30% faster Pro CPU workloads and up to 35% faster ray tracing graphics performance than M4 Pro and M4 Max in supported apps. This is proper professional kit. This is for editors, photographers, you developers out there, music producers, people doing serious creative work, people pushing AI workflows, people who buy a laptop and actually make it work hard for a living. So if you've got an M4 Pro or M4 Max machine already, I'd say stick, unless you've got a very specific reason to chase every last bit of performance. If you're on M1 Pro or M1 Max and you're beginning to feel the age of it, then yes, twisting starts to make a lot more sense. And if you're on Intel, twist and upgrade immediately, just go. Now, the one I find most interesting strategically is the MacBook Neo, because this feels like Apple looking at the lower end of the laptop market and deciding it didn't want to leave all that space to cheap plastic nonsense any longer. MacBook Neo starts at a breakthrough lower price of just $599, has a 13-inch Liquid Retina display, an aluminium design, up to 16 hours of battery life, a 1080p camera, and it runs on the A18 Pro chip rather than an M series chip. I've got to say, one of the cleverest things about this machine is that it does not look or feel like a compromise in the way that cheaper laptops often do, because at this sort of price point, most of the competition is plastic, slightly soulless, and built to be tolerated rather than enjoyed, whereas this still gives you that proper Apple thing of an aluminium body, clean design, and something that actually feels nice to use. Even the colorways feel considered. Citrus Neo has that lovely shifting quality where it moves from subtle to deeper and richer depending on the light, which I think is going to make it one of the most popular finishes. Blush is much more restrained than the name suggests, because in some light it looks silver with just a little hint of pink or fuchsia in the metal. And indigo has that deep, classy look that I think will be the other really popular option. Silver is for those of you that want something understated and could pass for a regular Mac Air or Mac Pro. I also love the fact that the keyboards are subtly shaded to match the color of the body, which is exactly the sort of attention to detail Apple people notice and everyone else rolls their eyes at until they see it in person. So, should you upgrade or even buy a MacBook Neo? If you already have a MacBook Air with Apple Silicon, then no. I'd say stick, because this is not your upgrade path. It sits below the Air and it's not trying to tempt existing Air owners away. But if you're still running an old Intel MacBook, a tired budget Windows laptop, you have a student in the family, or you just want a proper Mac for everyday work, browsing, email, writing, streaming, and all the normal things most people actually do on a laptop, then yes, this could be a huge twist, because it looks like one of those products that will bring a lot of people into the Mac world without making them feel like they bought the cheap one. Then we come to the Studio displays, and these are definitely worth talking about because they round out the whole desktop story very nicely. Apple refreshed the regular 27-inch Studio display and also introduced an all-new Studio Display XDR. As I said, the regular Studio display keeps the 27-inch 5K panel and adds a 12-megapixel center stage camera, which by the way is very, very good. Thunderbolt 5 and Studio Display XDR brings a 27-inch 5K Retina XDR display with mini LED backlighting, up to 1000 nits of SDR brightness and up to 2000 nits peak HDR brightness, a 120 Hz refresh rate and adaptive sync. And what I like here is that Apple seems to have improved exactly the things people actually notice in use. The new Studio Display XDR looks absolutely stunning, even in the brutal bright lights of an Apple store. And that's usually the test, because if a display still looks rich, detailed, and properly impressive in that environment, you know you're onto something. The detail and depth on it are incredible. It has that look where even if you don't know the specs, you instantly know you're looking at something serious. And on the newer Studio displays generally, the webcam improvement is obvious as well, which matters more than people admit, because so much work still happens on video calls, and there's no point building this lovely, expensive desk setup only to look like you're dialing in from a motorway service station. So should you stick or twist on the displays? If you already own the current Studio display, I'd generally say stick, because the refresh sounds nice and useful, but it's not revolutionary. But if you're a serious creative pro, especially if you're on an older external display and you've been waiting for Apple to offer something more advanced in this size with proper brightness, depth and professional appeal, then the Studio Display XDR becomes much more interesting. For everyone else, I think this falls into the category of admire it, lust after it, maybe film it in the Apple Store, but you probably don't need to buy it. So, if we boil this whole launch week down into something simple, here's where I've landed. iPhone 17e is the smart, sensible upgrade for people on older iPhones. iPad Air with M4 remains the sweet spot iPad for most people, but only if you're coming from something older. MacBook Air with M5 is probably the easiest laptop recommendation in the entire range. MacBook Pro is the monster for serious users who really need that level of power. And MacBook Neo could quietly be one of the most important products Apple has launched, because it opens the door to the Mac world at a much more accessible price without feeling cheap. And the Studio displays complete the picture nicely, with the regular Studio display getting a sensible refresh and the XDR version being the one that makes creative pros start mentally selling organs. My overall verdict is that Apple's theme last week wasn't reinvention, it was refinement. Smart product positioning and filling gaps in the lineup in a way that actually makes sense. The most interesting product strategically might be MacBook Neo. The best all-round laptop for most people is probably MacBook Air with M5. The machine that will get enthusiasts and creative pros most excited is of course the new MacBook Pro, and iPhone 17e might quietly be the smartest iPhone for most normal people. So no, you do not automatically need to upgrade just because Apple has waved a fresh slab of aluminium under your nose, but if you're on older gear, this was actually a very strong round of updates, and there are some genuinely sensible reasons to make the jump. Let me know in the comments what you're using right now and whether you're sticking with it or you're twisting and upgrading. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. and check out our channel memberships to further support the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been Roberto, and I'll see you on the next one.